I was there with a couple of friends and staying at the Johnson's old cottage and seeing smoke rising in the air, and we went out and walked down to the end by the lighthouse, and you could see the huge clouds of black smoke from the tar on the wharf and the huge columns of fire going up in the sky from it, and that pall of smoke rising up over what was remaining of the wharf, and the intensity of the fire. It had to be one of the most vicious fires I've ever seen outside of a war zone. And the smell of the tar and the creosote in the air, I can remember that later that day and just a couple of days I was there after.
Well, I remember we got the call about 5 to 1 or so in the afternoon, and the original call was just for a little bit of smoke coming between the cracks of the wharf. When we responded in the old rescue truck we used to have, the first three of us responded down in that, and when we turned on to Water Street, the whole end of the wharf was on fire. So August 31st was the date of the wharf fire. This is after we got the first 2 or 3 trucks on scene. You can see some of the cars on the wharf. The fire spread across the wharf through the whole top. And you see where the first fire truck here is right now, and there's nothing underneath that fire truck. It doesn't take long, and all of a sudden you'll start seeing flames coming back far back.
The truck gets scorched.
One side of it was scorched. Had to send it up and get it repainted, and unfortunately it was a new truck at the time, so yeah, we had fire departments from St. Stephen, St. George, Blacks Harbour, all were here helping out. There's smoke starting to come there now. Water flowing behind the second truck. They've just started the hydrant from the head of the wharf. From there, we called in as much backup as we could to help with it. Deer Island actually brought one of their fire trucks over on the Campobello ferry. So that was great. We used that as a fire boat off the end of the wharf. We were there. We were on scene for about 12 hours. We finally left around midnight. Left one person on site overnight for fire watch, and it was a day that don't forget too much of. I guess there's doing the wharf on fire and all the cars on the wharf and all the boats in the harbor were floating around and on fire. It was quite an interesting day. Yeah, there was some scrambling going on right then. But, luckily nobody was hurt, and we finally did get the trucks backed up and went back to attack mode.
Where are you?
I'm there somewhere. I think they just backed up beside me there. Or I'm pulling hose, one or the other.
So there were cars lost and boats lost?
Yes, there was, I think, 8 cars left on the wharf from people that rode on one of the tour boats that were destroyed, and there was 1, 2... I think 3 of the big fishing boats and a few skiffs lost, and there's some water being sprayed underneath the wharf, trying to hold it from coming back up. And that day there happened to be a cruise ship in the Bayside port. Had quite a few spectators, extra 2,000 or 3,000 people in town that day. I think they sneaked down and take a video right on the wharf. All the boats off the pontoon. Somebody went down and pulled all the boats ashore to get them away from the pontoon. Here in a minute or two, you'll see the Deer Island boat ferry from Campobello coming across, and Deer Island put one of their fire trucks on it, brought it over, went to the head of the wharf, and used it as a fire boat. There's the Deer Island ferry coming in with the Deer Island fire truck on it.
Well, that was smart. It must have got here fairly quickly, didn't it?
Yeah, they're pretty quick on their feet over there, so great idea, thinking outside the box and how to help out. And the owners of the ferry had no issues with taking it out of service and sending the fire truck up on it, so.
That's what people do, isn't it?
It is, yeah, especially here in Charlotte County.
to start?
That we're not sure of. It was still a federal wharf at the time, so they did the investigation, and it never really came back with a pinpoint on what the cause was.
There was a fish and chip shop, wasn't there?
There was a fish and chip shop. They were able to get out and get up the wharf with everybody else when the fire started, but again, we don't think it started around them. So
No?
no. So.
It would be an obvious place.
Yeah, no, there was a few things that were going on that day that all could have led to different things happening, so it was just too hard for the investigators to pin down. Like I mentioned earlier, at St. Stephen, Blacks Harbour, St. George, some of the outlying departments here assisting. So, a mixture of their firefighters and ours down on the hoses. There's some of the destroyed boats on the beach.
So what was the worst thing about it for you?
Being there in that first truck and hoping everybody had made it off the wharf, because there was no way we could get on it to check. It was so much fire was coming up when we got there. And just the sheer size of the fire. As a new firefighter at the time, I was only on the department for 3 years. That was the biggest fire I'd seen. And it took your breath away for a few minutes, that's for sure.
Dominic says his big memory was the smell of the creosote.
Yes, yeah. It was very thick, heavy smoke, and luckily the wind was blowing it out of the harbour, so it wasn't too bad. I remember the Blacks Harbour crew, when they arrived, we were talking after a while, after we got it knocked down, we were on a break, and they said when they topped the hill in Penfield, they thought the whole town was on fire. There was just so much smoke coming up off it.
Made an impression. I spent so many days and hours of my life on that wharf, and I was a little kid fishing off the pontoon on one side, and seeing that going up in flames, it felt like a part of my childhood had gone. So it's even stranger today seeing the discussions around rebuilding the wharf again, because the wharf that was there when I was a kid seemed like it was always going to be there, but things move along.
It's one of the boats that was destroyed. You see the cars on the wharf. Those poor folks, they were out on one of the tour boats, like I said, and come back from the end of the tour and everything's gone. They're
desperate.
Yeah, so I can't remember where they're all from. I know there was a few that were tourists out of the States. That Ford truck had the keys in it. It was a gentleman that's used to being on the wharf, and he was out doing, I can't remember what fishery he's involved in now, but he'd left the keys in the ignition because, you park on the wharf, you leave your keys in case something happens.
So how do the cars get turned over?
They flipped them over so they get the hot spots underneath them. And there's where the canteen used to be.